Perhaps I have acquired an insatiable appetite for that feast of cosmic comida which lies just outside the collective reach of our little human brains. Perhaps my eyes are bigger than my britches. I don't know. But whatever chemical seems to have flooded my brain that time I looked up into the night sky and took my first bite out of the éclair of the extraterrestrially esoteric, I've been positively starving ever since. I was a brooding teenager. We were visiting Baltimore for the first time. Like most of my memories from before the thrashing seas and torrential rains of secondary school, my recollection of any such time is foggy at best. I do, however, remember a ship, a sloop of war, the last purely sail-powered vessel built for the U.S. Navy. But its name and its history are what captivated me so. It was by no means the only vessel to have done this, but it was the first sailing ship I believe I'd ever seen in person. Late at night, on the 26th of September, 1860, just 7 months before the start of active hostilities in the American Civil War, this mystery ship I was now staring awestruck at in Baltimore Harbor had sighted the sinister bark Cora off the West African coast, speeding away from the mouth of the mighty Congo River. Having miraculously gleaned the lantern light of the stealthy sailing ship from the darkness and those ever darker waters of the South Atlantic, the bored crew of our storied sloop made haste in pursuit. But they found their speedy prey pulling away, and so the crew trimmed the vessel for the chase and even wet the sails so they could push the sloop along. Soon enough, they were gaining on the Cora, and as they approached, the pursued crew dampened their lanterns, hoping to slip away. But this only heightened their danger, as their pursuers in their ship twice the size nearly ran them down and collided in the darkness of the night. Tragedy barely avoided, the chase was over. And so too was the horror. The crew of the Navy sloop boarded the flagless bark and reportedly were overcome by emotion. On board the tiny Cora, they found no less than 705 men, women, and children kidnapped from their homes along the Congo River and crammed into truly horrific conditions, where they had received no water or food for the entire duration of their 30-hour voyage. The ship was impounded, the officers and slavers charged with violating high crimes against the importation of African slaves that had been on the books for well over 50 years. But the victims of this horrific crime could not even be taken home. The Navy only had 4 ships in the area and judged it too dangerous for both the rescued and their rescuers to return upriver, where slavers, again operating illegally and with near impunity, would only capture them once again. They instead sailed for Liberia, a U.S. protectorate and colony founded by freed slaves, and dropped their battered but unbroken fellow human beings safely back on their home continent as a free people. The story, lifted from museum reading material clasped tightly in my palm, nested in my brain and moved me as I sat harborside staring at this vessel of human dignity. I looked again at the pamphlet, then quickly back at the vessel, suddenly aware of the depth of meaning in the sloop's enchanted name. Scrawled across the stern and accompanied by 3 beautiful Baroque carvings of stars was the vessel's moniker, the USS Constellation. For the first time in my recorded memory, my lips had tasted what I have forever since regarded as the majestic marriage of the manifestation of meaning to the manumission of mankind. I was, as I am so often, snapped out of my cosmic trance by the beckoning of my loving family, keenly interested in moving on to the apparent highlight of the trip, a bakery not far from the harbor, which in hushed breaths was said to have the best éclairs in the mid-Atlantic region. The ship to my back and the sun setting above me, I brooded brutally with my broody teenage self down the streets of Baltimore, only too happy to arrive at said bakery 12.5 minutes later. The sun set by now. We entered the bakery, and like all best-of-their-class establishments, it was unassuming and plain. White walls with no color, every square inch of floor space taken up by instruments of bakery. This was an artist's studio, and not, as seems so common nowadays, the art itself. 6 éclairs, please. Could have guessed at that, smiles the baker. Shuffle, shuffle, exchange currency units. Now I'm outside with an éclair in hand, feet planted on a planet of horror and humanity, disaster and decency. My eyes are turned to the cosmos above. Remember the ship. Remember the feeling. Remember the story. Cool breeze on your face, éclair in hand. 3 beats. Close your eyes. Take a bite. There's getting off, drunk, and high. There's falling in love. There's validation and praise. There's taking pride in your work. There's feeling the sand being pulled by the waves from underneath you. There's 1,000 thread count silk sheets and powerful aircon on a blistering summer's eve. And then there's radiating pure meaning and purpose and synchronicity with all of humanity and the cosmos itself, while munching on the best éclair in the mid-Atlantic region at 12 years old, with your entire life ahead of you. And if that's not a meaning of life, then I don't know what is.